I'm a qualified nutritional therapist, personal trainer and eating disorder coach, and we've got Becky Stone here today. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself?
So hi Jen, hi everybody, I'm Becky Stone. I'm a qualified counsellor, supervisor, and I specialise in working with eating disorders with young people and adults.
Amazing, thank you very much. And today we are going to be talking about why atypical anorexia is on the rise and answering a few questions that I've had on social media about atypical anorexia, especially on TikTok as well. So, Becky, would you like to start off about, atypical anorexia versus anorexia nervosa? So what is the difference?
So it tends to be that when people come into therapy, it depends where they are. So atypical anorexia is where that you're not sick enough and you end up being able to coast along without your illness getting picked up, and you sort of live with it. So you can have two people. So if you have two teenagers at a certain weight, one of the teenagers can end up dropping and losing weight very, very quickly and then end up going into the eating disorder services and get picked up very quickly because they're at higher risk. Doesn't mean that the eating disorder within the other person who's lost a little bit less weight in a longer period of time their illness isn't as severe. And they both have got eating disorders and they've both got anorexia.
Yeah.
But it's also the services don't pick it up on the atypical side. Sorry, I didn't say that correctly. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. So so people with atypical anorexia, will have this. They'll present with the same symptoms as those with anorexia nervosa, just minus the low weight, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they end up sort of slipping through the system. So when they end up coming into therapy with me, they're like, I'm having to then pick up and I hear the anorexic voice, and that's the way we need to do the work and nip it quite quickly.
Okay, so perhaps more awareness around atypical anorexia for GPs is needed. Would you agree?
Yeah, because I can then put a referral into the GP system and then say that the eating disorder service need to be flagged up, especially if they're young. And then what will happen is they go into the doctors and then they get told that there's nothing really wrong with them. They just need to go away and eat. Well, no, they need more support than that.
Yeah, and then that makes them feel that their eating disorder is not being, is not being validated. They're not seeing, and they go away feeling, like they're not sick enough. Because I've seen comments on TikTok. So I've done a couple of videos on TikTok about atypical anorexia, and I had a few comments on there saying, someone said, it was damaging to diagnose it as atypical anorexia because it gave this person, that validation, that invalidation for their eating disorder. But I thought, okay, well, there needs to be a distinguishment between anorexia nervosa and atypical. But perhaps that person was turned away by someone or was turned away by services of the GP, then that made them feel, or made the eating disorder invalid, I guess.
No, I agree with you. I think it's that part that whichever way you look at this, somebody is going to have an answer to agree with it and disagree with it. It's important that whoever the person is with the eating disorder, whether it's atypical anorexia or anorexia, it is an eating disorder and you need help with it to help you move forward.
Yes, definitely. I mean, having had anorexia nervosa and atypical anorexia as well, I definitely had the same symptoms with both of them. So the kind of the symptoms. Well, I know obviously everyone is different, but let's talk about the symptoms now. So symptoms I had was feeling cold all the time. That was one of them.
Raynaud's.
Yeah. So the Raynaud's. Periods, obviously loss of period. I see that a lot as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes hair loss, obviously lack of concentration, high anxiety. Those were the symptoms that I had. Are there any more that you could add to that for atypical anorexia?
So concentration, zoning out, wanting to be in your room all the time, not wanting to socialise, having high anxiety, thinking about food all the time, but then trying to convince yourself you don't have a problem with it. just very, very conscious, thinking about food and body shape, weight and size all the time.
Okay. Yeah, because you can still be under eating if you're still eating your 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for a message out there to give to parents as well, because if they're thinking, oh, you know, my child's eating, you know, they're fine, but not necessarily, because they can still be under eating if they're on 3 meals a day. It's still easily done to under eat on 3 meals a day.
And I think that's how people go underneath the system, especially teenagers, when they've gone in, like they've skipped breakfast, they've gone into school, parents are thinking they're eating, they're then skipping meals at school, or they're eating quite little, and then they get home and then they have to eat the food that the parents are giving them. And that's how that the eating disorder is taking hold, because they're reducing their breakfast and their lunch. They don't want to be eating in front of everybody else, and then they're made to have dinner, which in their heads they're thinking, well, at least I'm eating something.
Yeah. But yeah, that's obviously with this live, that's what me and Becky are passionate about. So we work with a lot of people, anorexic clients. So Becky does the therapy side for the eating disorder, and I look at the nutrition side. Would you like to explain a little bit more about what you do with clients with that, Becky, as well?
So when I get a client coming to therapy, the most important bit is I make sure that the young person wants to be with me, because sometimes that parents have got so anxious and so worried that they've come to therapy and the young person has no idea why they're with me and they don't think they've got a problem. And then you start talking to them and building up that relationship, and then it's trying to distinguish the bit with the eating disorder voice. So there will always be two parts. You'll have the young person and their personality, and then you'll have the eating disorder voice. And I know for me, when I had anorexia, my voice was loud, and I convinced people that I was okay, but because I've had it, I can pick it up quite quickly. And I think it's that part it doesn't matter what size your body is, you can hear that voice coming through within the eating disorder, and that's where the atypical anorexia will be flagged up through the voice.
Yeah, definitely. And as we were discussing earlier about, you know, people of larger size can also have anorexia because they have starving traits as well. That's another to it.
And I think that's the bit that where when people have gone to the GP and they've spoken to the GP about it, this is where sometimes it can get slipped through the system, because their weight and their BMI is not low enough, but there's the eating disorder there. And that's where I call it the little gremlin. It's sort of feeding, it's taking shape, it's taking hold.
So I guess, you know, obviously we know that services are unfortunately very busy. You know, how can we help to promote sort of more, how can we help, you know, people know that, you know, that they don't need to get sicker to get help? It's so hard because they just feel like they do. I think more awareness around atypical anorexia and education. That's what I think.
No, I agree with you. And it's that part of being able to talk about it, bring the awareness in, and getting people to understand that this is quite a serious issue. And if you can resolve and work towards building up confidence, restoring health and weight, and being able to work through that, the eating disorder will settle and you get your life back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously atypical anorexia can go into anorexia as well, like if it continues. But you know, and that's what we want to avoid. And long periods of food restriction can be detrimental to people's health, to girls and boys, especially to their hormones, like girls losing their period, hormonal imbalances. So important to like catch this early.
Yeah, and also being able to go the opposite side. So you've got it goes into anorexia, but then it can flip into the other side of it, of the binge eating side, where your body is so hungry, it can create another type of eating disorder that doesn't sort of get picked up or highlighted.
Yeah, and then people get stuck in this sort of binge restrict phase, don't they?
And then the guilt and the shame makes it worse.
Yes, of course. And that's why obviously us working together, working on nutrition, establishing the blood sugar, balancing the diet out, eventually their body will return back to a state of health. But it's working through that over time, of course.
Yeah, and it's not like, sometimes people will come to me and they say, well, how long do I need to be in therapy? How long does it take? it takes as long and as much of an investment as it comes from the other person. And I always say it's tools in the toolbox. I've got tools to be able to help you, but you have got to meet me in the middle to be able to use those tools. And sometimes it can take 4 months, it can take 6 months, it can take a year, but it's got to come from the person of wanting to recover.
Of course, and it also depends. Everyone's different. Every recovery is different. Person's recovery is the same. That's where I think young people have got to stop comparing their recovery to other people as well, because I see that a lot on social media.
Oh, definitely. And then there's like a little competition that goes on between them, and then one will say, oh, well, I'm not sick enough, I don't have a problem, and then the other person is sicker, so then they can sort of go, well, actually I haven't got an issue. It's like, well, there is an eating disorder there, and it's about being able to identify it.
Definitely. Is there anything else that you want to add to this little mini live that we've done on atypical anorexia before we finish up?
I would say to anyone who's got any concerns, do a little bit of research on it and talk to the GP and make sure that you are heard as well. So there is a leaflet on the Beats website that you can take along, and you can print it off. It's a PDF. That's a good bouncing board, that when you think that you've got an undercurrent of an eating disorder, take it to the GP, get them to listen to you as well, get your bloods done, and then get blind weighed as well, because if you've got stuff going on around with food, the last thing you need is a number count as well.
No, definitely. And where can everyone find you on social media, Becky?
So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. If you Google Counsellor Who Cares, you can come up, or you can Google my website, Counsellor Who Cares, and I'm also on YouTube.
Excellent. Guys,
I had a brain moment, sorry.
I'm on Ask Jen, guys, on all social media accounts, and then my TikTok is Jen Tame. But if you've got any questions, just comment on this live. It will be reposted on the Ask Jen Up page. Thank you all for joining, and we'll be live again next week, and we'll see you all soon.
See you later.